thing I did was grab my phone and call, and when I heard $0, my chest went into my throat.
Maggie Aragon has been a SNAP recipient for more than 3 decades. Even with these benefits, she says she also relies on food banks to get enough food.
I have depended on those benefits since the 1990s, and it's detrimental to my life if I don't get them.
There are more than 460,000 New Mexicans using SNAP benefits. Tonight, some of them telling us they don't have those right now. Friday, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham announced $30 million in state funds would be used to supply SNAP users starting November 1st.
We're going to choose feeding families over politics in New Mexico. We're going to do that right now.
The food stamps program is administered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They proudly report that they distribute free meals and food stamps to 46 million people on an annual basis. Meanwhile, the National Park Service, ran by the U.S. Department of Interior, asked us to please do not feed the animals when we visit the parks. Their stated reason for this policy is being that the animals will grow accustomed and dependent on the handouts, and they will never learn to take care of themselves.
This program is keeping a lot of people unmarried, uneducated, don't want to, do anything that will hinder their opportunity, their chance to lose their benefits.
Only in America do we have people that have $1,200 iPhones checking to see if their SNAP benefits hit.
Anyone who's on welfare, not for a disability, but because they can't provide for themselves, should not have the ability to vote in our society.
I don't have kids, but there's no way that I have kids and I'm waiting on somebody else to feed them.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about President Trump making a decision that, honestly, I didn't think that they would make, which is to go along with the woke judges that are trying to save the Democrats from the consequences of a shutdown that they caused by distributing the emergency SNAP funds that the USDA has in order to keep SNAP partially funded during the government shutdown. Now, these funds are going to run out in like 2 weeks, okay? I mean, they're not really going to be able to fully fund SNAP. But the Trump administration has decided that they're not going to fight these judges and that they're going to do what they can in order to keep SNAP funded, at least for now, because politically speaking, I'm assuming that the Trump administration has made the calculation that from a PR perspective, from an optics perspective, it doesn't look good to withhold these funds while Democrats run around and blame Trump for the shutdown and claim that people are going hungry because of Trump, right? We have a lot of idiots in this country, a lot of stupid people in this country who honestly shouldn't be voting, who actually do believe that it's Trump's fault that this shutdown is happening, okay? It really is sad, the state of the country that we're living in regards to how informed the populace is as a whole. But regardless, President Trump is extending the SNAP benefits. Again, it's not going to last for long, but he's also doubling and tripling down on going nuclear against the Democrats. And I want to talk about that because I think that that's going to bring up a very interesting conversation about whether or not the Republicans actually should use the nuclear option on Democrats if they just simply refuse to agree to open up the government. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it.
I'm not going to do it by being extorted by the Democrats who have lost their way. There's something wrong with these people.
So then what happens on November 15th when the troops
case.
don't get a paycheck?
Schumer is a basket case, and he has nothing to lose. He's become, I just left Japan, he's become a kamikaze pilot.
Sounds like it's not going to get solved, the shutdown.
It's going to get solved, yeah. Oh, it's going to get solved.
How?
We'll get it solved. Eventually, they're going to have to vote.
You're saying the Democrats will capitulate?
I think they have to. And if they don't vote, that's their problem. Now, I happen to agree with something else. I think we should do the nuclear option. This is a totally different nuclear, by the way. It's called ending the filibuster.
That's where we begin our look at today's top stories. In an exclusive interview with 60 Minutes, Norah O'Donnell asked the president about his call to end the filibuster, and Mr. Trump doubled down.
He said today they're not going to do that.
I know John doesn't. Well, John and a few other. But you know what? The Republicans have to get tougher. If we end the filibuster, we can do exactly what we want. We're not going to lose power. The theory is, then we'll do it. But then when they get into power someday, they'll do it. That's true. But you know what?
So you think John
We're
Thune...
here right now. No, I like John Thune. I think he's terrific. But I disagree with him on this point.
He said today he wasn't going to do it.
Well, that's too bad.
Food assistance funding is supposed to be distributed today, despite the White House saying it actually would not because of the government shutdown. You see, 2 federal judges ruled Friday the Trump administration has to dip into a contingency fund to make this happen. In a social media post, the president said he asked his lawyers to get clarification from the court about how to legally fund SNAP benefits. And the transportation secretary says the shutdown's impact on the nation's airports is going to get worse. On Face the Nation, Sean Duffy said the government will stop air traffic to avoid safety issues. And new CBS News polling shows more Americans are feeling uneasy about the shutdown's economic impact. 54% of Americans say they're very concerned, which, as you see on your screen, is up from 49% early last month. And more people are souring on the politicians involved as well. President Trump, Democrats, and Republicans in Congress have all seen people's disapproval of their handling of the shutdown rise since October. CBS News Chief White House Correspondent Nancy Cordes brings us more on the shutdown from the White House now. Good morning, Nancy. The Trump administration faces this deadline today over benefits. There's a back and forth. So where do things stand at this moment?
Well, here's where things stand, Errol. There are not one but 2 federal courts who have said just in the past couple of days that the administration has to make these payments and that it has to use contingency funds in order to do it so that there is no lapse in the SNAP benefits that go to 42 million households in this country. On Friday, President Trump said he wasn't so sure and that his lawyers weren't that sure that they could simply pay these benefits out in a shutdown. The court said, oh, no, you can, and you need to do it right away. So yesterday, on a couple of the Sunday shows, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that they are going to try to do it, that it could happen by Wednesday. He wasn't definitive, but he said that the president doesn't want these benefits to lapse, and Democrats say they don't want them to lapse either. But nevertheless, there are millions of Americans who are worried that they are going to lose out on these benefits, at least temporarily. And for people like Rebecca Hall, who we spoke to, has 5 kids and who relies on that monthly check, this is a big worry. Take a listen.
I said, wow, this is really happening in America. For people like me that pay PS&G, pay rent, transportation, stuff that the kids need, now you're going to have to pick and choose.
Five kids. 5 kids. My question is, where's the father? Where's the father? That should be the question, right? If we lived in a sane country, the media would ask the question of, where's the father instead of where's the government, right? I think that kind of sums up my frustration with this food stamp conversation. Because we've normalized this idea that the government should be there to take care of people who've made bad choices, right? Now, I don't know this woman's situation, right? So, again, I'm only saying this just based off the information that I have. And what typically is the situation with these single mothers, which is that they laid up and they had a whole bunch of kids that they couldn't afford with some deadbeat. And again, I'm not saying that that's this woman's situation specifically. Okay, I don't know, right? But typically that's what happens. They lay up, they have a bunch of these kids, they live off the government, and the government basically incentivizes them to continue to do this vicious cycle, okay, that has harmed communities, right? That has destroyed the black community. Let's be real. They continue to incentivize it by helping these people despite their bad decisions. Now, some people may argue that, well, the kid shouldn't be punished because of the bad decisions of the parent. Yes, that is true. I agree with that. But at some point, right, as a society, we have to say, okay, let's disincentivize people from making the choices in the first place, the bad choices in the first place. That way, they don't do it. It happens less often. And we need something in place in order to make sure children don't starve without incentivizing this. Now, one of the things I am noticing when it comes to what people are doing to get by without their food stamps is that they're going to food banks, right? That's what they're doing. They're depending on churches. They're depending on their local community. Now, personally, I think that should be the solution. I really do. I think that there has to be some type of voucher program where you get enough food or you get the basics in order to feed the kids. But yet it's not one of those things where these individuals can take advantage of it in the same way that they're doing right now, right? Where essentially you get an EBT card and you can spend it on whatever, right? Whatever food, okay? And in some cases, a lot of these people, they sell their EBT funds for cash, right? In order to be able to get their nails done, get their hair done, stuff like that. Things that don't have to do with feeding their kids. There has to be something that can be done to disincentivize this. We have to stop incentivizing this. I'm sick and tired of incentivizing it. This has to stop. There has to be radical reform and radical change to food stamps. There has to be. Because as a taxpayer, I'm sick and tired of funding this. I don't want to fund it. I don't want to pay for people's bad decisions. I'm sorry. And that doesn't make you a bad person to say that. It doesn't. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when you continue to fund stuff like this, you're just driving up taxes. You're driving up costs, inflation for everybody else. People who actually do make good decisions. People who do get up every single day and they work hard. They go to work. They do what they got to do in order to get by, right? And the people who are harmed the most by this are those who happen to be in the lower middle class to middle class who, again, work for a living, who make the right decisions, but yet they just don't make enough to really live comfortably, but they make too much to get benefits from the government. Those are the people that I feel for the most in this country, and that is who I fight for. Because when I come up here and I talk about how welfare is destroying this country, what I'm talking about is how welfare destroys the lower middle class and middle class working people, right? That is what I'm talking about in the form of inflation, mainly inflation, and taxation, okay? That's what happens. Now, what I can't stand is when people try to use the Bible against Christians who simply say, hey, people need to work, right? The same people who, never read the Bible, right? Like Democrats and, people on the left. When Paul wrote letters to Christians, early Christians, to Thessalonica, explicitly stating that, hey, those of you who are not working, you should work. You can't just sit idly by. You can't be lazy waiting for Christ to return. In fact, as Christians, we're not even supposed to associate with people who refuse to work, right? People who are sitting around waiting for handouts. We're not supposed to associate with those people, okay? That is the punishment that they're supposed to get. Not because they're the enemy, but to warn him as a brother, right? Which essentially just means, hey, we're doing this for your own good, right? Not because we hate you, not because we want you to starve, not because we don't want you to eat, but because we love you, right? Because we want you to do better, right? We want you to contribute to the community, right? And to earn your keep, okay? So don't let anybody ever shame you as a Christian for simply saying that people need to work. People need to put in an honest effort to work in order to receive these benefits from the government. But again, furthermore, I personally believe that it should be the job of the local community to make sure that people are fed. And I think that the local community can do a much better job at holding people accountable than the government. So again, this experiment that we're currently going through, where again, people are not receiving their food stamps and they're relying on the community, they're relying on others, right? I've had to help people who are on food stamps. I've actually sent funds to people that I know whose food stamps have ran out. And I personally believe that there has to be a better solution than what we currently have. Okay. So anyways, let's continue.
And so just like we've talked about with government workers, Errol, who, some of them can't miss even a single paycheck without getting into some serious financial trouble, there are a lot of parents out there who say even one missed SNAP check puts them into the red as well.
Yeah, which impacts their children directly. Nancy Cordes.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Now, again, President Trump is calling for the nuclear option against Democrats in order to open back up the government. And this is what Mike Johnson, the leader of the House, the Speaker of the House, had to say about that. Take a look.
Do you agree with President Trump that now is the time to get rid of the Senate filibuster? He's saying it's gone on too long. Let's do the nuclear option.
So I talked to the president multiple times over the weekend, I mentioned, and of course the filibuster came up. This is a Senate matter. It has nothing to do with the House. Everybody wants to know what my opinion is. I mean, my opinion is irrelevant. I understand desperate times call for desperate measures. I also understand that traditionally we've seen that as an important safeguard. I mean, I obviously shared my thoughts with the president on that. As much as I have wanted to blow up the filibuster sometime as a House member when we were not getting what we wanted done in our agenda, I hear my Senate Republican colleagues, some of the most conservative people in Congress, who say it's an important safeguard. It prevents us. It holds us back from the Democrats' worst impulses. What would the Democrats do if they had no filibuster impediment, no speed bump at all? They've already told us. They would pack the Supreme Court. You'd go from 9 to 13 or 15 or 17 or however many liberals they can pack on the court. You would have D.C. and Puerto Rico be made into states, which would give 4 additional Democrat senators there in the count and make us a permanent minority. I guess that would be their calculation. You would see massive restriction of the Second Amendment rights. You'd see them federalize elections so they could take over and manipulate things in the red states. I mean, there's a lot of abuses that could come. And so that's the caveat. That's what they're working through. And I speak frankly and honestly with the president, and he's very passionate about this. We're all very passionate. I think what you see in this debate we're having on our own side is a reflection of the anger that we feel, the real desperation that we feel, because we want the government to be reopened. We want to serve the American people as best we can, and any hindrance to that is something that everybody's looking at very carefully. Again, not a House issue, it's a Senate issue, and we'll see how that's resolved.
Yeah, so the point that Republicans are trying to make to President Trump is that, hey, if we do this, if we get rid of the filibuster in the Senate, then what's going to happen is that Democrats are going to do whatever they want to do. And there's a lot of truth to that, but maybe, just maybe, they're going to do that anyways. Maybe when Democrats take back power and control, they're going to get rid of the filibuster regardless. But again, Democrats are going on record and saying that, hey, this is what they want to do. Put it this way. Democrat propagandists and strategists are saying this, which probably means that Democrats are going to do it.
When they asked him about a third term, which is, I was like, why are you asking him about a third term? But there's no reason to think that these things aren't on the table if the longer he feels like, oh, I can just do whatever I want to.
Yes, he does trial balloons.
Yeah.
He says things like the third term. He waits for the reaction. If the reaction isn't strong enough.
And it hasn't been that strong.
What about on Truth Social, where he's been talking about the filibuster as one's king of one's regime does?
Well, he is telling the Republicans, the Senate Republicans, get rid of the filibuster. Now is the time so you can push through the budget. I think that the Democrats are just salivating over this. And I think the Republicans are scared. They don't want to get rid of this filibuster because they know that if the Democrats take over in the midterms or whenever at some point the Democrats are going to have the Senate, the first thing they're going to do is make Washington, D.C. another state.
Yes.
Free D.C.
Free D.C. They're going to free D.C.
And that means 2 more senators, Democratic senators.
Yep.
And this is the Republican nightmare.
Yeah. That's a problem, right? You have James Carville, who's a Democrat strategist, basically saying the same thing.
Let's talk about democracy, and you have these people, importance of democracy and preserving democracy and saving democracy. Well, the truth of the matter is, people are right when they say this democracy is really imperfect. And they're going to have to do, if the Democrats win the presidency, the Senate and the House in 2028, which is not impossible. I don't know if you say likely or possible. I don't know what word you know, but it's certainly not impossible. They are just going to have to unilaterally add Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia states. They're going to have to, the Congress does give The Constitution gives Congress power over federal elections. I don't think they can redistrict, but they're things they go do. They're going to have to do it. They're just going to have to do it, and they may have to expand the court to 13 members. Any of those things in isolation, I would be skeptical about. I would be cautious about. I would say, well, I don't know if that's the greatest idea in the world. You're opening Pandora's box, or all kinds of things. If you want to save democracy, I think you got to do all of those things, because we just are moving further and further away from being anything close to democracy. And I don't know if it's something that they should talk about during the campaign. I guess you probably would want to, because if you have a Democratic House, a Democratic senator, and a Democratic president, they should do that on day one. 4 more United States senators, 4 more Supreme Court members, and some stringent national legislation on how you can do Congress. They could easily pass a law saying you can only redistrict once every 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, would it precipitate a constitutional crisis? Would the Supreme Court say you can't expand to 13? Would they say that some impediment to adding 2 more states? Sure. And what they do, they'll just issue a ruling on the shadow docket saying that it's overturned, but that you got to force ahead.
So the point is that I do think that Democrats are looking at this like an opportunity. I think that's ultimately what they want, right? My gut feeling tells me that the president simply would be playing into the hands of Democrats if he decides that he really wants to use the nuclear option to open back up the government. I really do think that Republicans need to use this as an opportunity to speak truth to power about how Obamacare is a failure, right? How our welfare program needs massive reform. This was done before. The Clinton Democrats did this, right? Along with Newt Gingrich and the Republicans, right? We've done this before in the 90s. We've had reforms in the 90s. Like, we can do this. And if Republicans decide that they have to get rid of the filibuster in order to get the government open, right? They say, you know what? We're done negotiating with Democrats. They better make sure that they pass every major ticket item that conservatives want. We better get welfare reform. We better have Obamacare repealed and replaced with a more free market system that gets rid of special interest regulations that are driving up the price, right? That stops subsidizing illegals. We better get reforms when it comes to voter ID across the country. We better get every single thing that we want if they decide that they want to get rid of the filibuster. But my gut feeling says they should not do it. I think what they should do is that they should bring back the actual filibuster where people had to, or senators had to actually talk, right? They had to sit on the Senate floor and they had to actually talk in order to stop progress in Congress, right? That's what they should do first. Before thinking about getting rid of the filibuster altogether, right? Or carving out an exception when it comes to government shutdowns. Before doing that, bring back the talking filibuster. Make Democrats work, right? Make them sit on the floor and continuously tell us why is it that the government should be shut down as people lose their benefits, right? Make them talk. Make them earn it, okay? That's what the Republicans should actually do, right? Before they decide to, again, get rid of the filibuster, which I don't know if they will. I don't know if they're actually going to listen to the president on this. But again, if they're going to do anything when it comes to filibuster, actually make it painful again, right? Make it a painful thing to use. So that way it's not so easy, because right now all Democrats got to do is just say, well, we're not going to, we're just not going to vote for the continuing resolution. But again, if you make them actually talk, if you make the politicians actually talk, okay, on the Senate floor, if you make them actually work, okay, if you make it painful, then they might not have as much juice, right? They might actually get tired. They might say, hey, this is not worth it, right? Also, what they need to do is during these government shutdowns, they need to make sure that the politicians don't get paid. That's also what they should be doing. So again, any shutdown that happens, again, as a result of the filibuster, not only do you have to actually talk, okay, but you don't get paid as well too. So you make it extremely painful so that you understand and you know that, okay, well, if we're going to use the filibuster in order to shut down the government, then again, it's going to be painful. It ain't going to be easy to do, right? I think that's what they should do first. My gut feeling says getting rid of the filibuster is going to backfire, even though I think there's an argument to be made that Democrats, if they take back power and control, they're going to try to get rid of it anyways, because they tried to under Biden. They just didn't have the support, right? John Fetterman, Kristen Sinema stopped them from doing it, but they tried to do it. They just didn't have the support. So again, I mean, realistically, they would probably need to get 53, 54, 55 senators in order to actually do it, okay, if they ever take back power and control. And that's probably unlikely. It's probably unlikely unless Republicans really, really, really shit the bed, right? It's unlikely that they'll get enough support to actually do it. So that's the gamble here. The gamble is that if Republicans go ahead and get rid of the filibuster to open up the government, then you're opening up the door for Democrats to do it in the future if they can get enough support, right? If they, again, take back power and control, and then, again, they get 53, 54, 55, majority, then, yeah, I mean, that opens up the door for them to do it. And if they actually do it, then they're going to make it impossible for Republicans to win elections in the future, because they're going to make Puerto Rico a state. They're going to make D.C. a state. At the very least, they're going to make D.C. a state. Like, there's no doubt in my mind they're going to make D.C. a state. And we already know that's automatically 2 senators right there. So that is something that we have to avoid, right? We have to make sure that doesn't happen. So again, I think that the real solution, again, is to make the filibuster painful again, and to make sure that the politicians don't get paid during the shutdown. And again, if you make it painful for the politicians, then it's less likely that we're going to be put in situations like this. Democrats are only doing this because, again, it's not painful for them, at least not yet, in regards to public opinion and public backlash. But I believe, my gut feeling tells me that the longer that this drags on, the more pressure Democrats are going to get in order to open up the government, right? And I think that Republicans need to go on television and to continue to make better arguments. Who knows? Again, maybe they have to participate in, these stunts that Democrats participate in regards to doing protests, doing things that draw the attention of the media so that people understand the argument that Republicans are making. Because if you're an educated person, or put it this way, if you're an informed person, if you're not completely stupid, then yeah, I mean, it's super obvious that this is happening because of Democrats, that Democrats can easily just open up the government by agreeing to the same Biden level spending that they agreed to before in the past. So that's what I think the solution is. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.